here's the deal. Women who are actually doing the thing, decluttering their homes and their lives, leveling up, going after and living the life that they say they want, they don't keep returning to the same clutter. Not in their stuff, habits, or mindsets, or even in the people that they allow around them. Meaning, if you want a different life, you have to stop returning to the same level by letting go of the version of you that keeps accepting less than what you're actually worth. So today, we're going to talk about why we keep returning to the same clutter, 3 shifts that you can make to start living from a higher standard, and what it actually takes to make this stick this time. While you may be dealing with clutter, clutter isn't the problem. Your standard of self-worth is. Here's what I mean by that. Self-worth, it is a standard, a living, active standard that shows up in every single decision that you make. What you keep, what you let go of, what you stay in contact with, what you are willing to put up with. Every one of those decisions is a vote, either for the life that you say that you want or for the version of yourself that doesn't quite believe that she deserves it yet. And this isn't just about what you get rid of. It is about the mindset that you're living from. And the best way that I know how to explain that is through what I call a privileged mindset. If you're new here, let me catch you up real quick. A privileged mindset isn't about what you have. It is about how you see yourself. And I know that that goes against what it is that we have all been taught. We've been taught that privilege is something external, something that you are either born into or get because you were extra lucky, or you're locked out of. But when you see it as the resulting actions that come from how you see yourself, you realize that it is something that you can step into, and then the world opens up. If you've been following along with our Level Up by Summer series, this connects directly to the ownership standard that we talked about in the last video. Once you decide, this is my life to take responsibility for, the next level is, what do I actually believe I'm worthy of having? Self-worth isn't what you say. It's what you allow, what you decide, and what you follow through on. People with a high standard of self-worth decide what belongs, quickly let go of what doesn't. They protect their environment, and they move with expectation, not hesitation. They don't overthink it. They trust that they're worthy of it. To people on the outside, a woman who is on the receiving end of that can look like she's just lucky, like things just work out for her, doors open easier, like she just gets treated differently. And some of that is true, but not because life is just unfairly handing her something special, but because she moves like she expects it. And the world has a funny way of responding to that energy. People rise to meet your standard when you actually have one. I also mentioned that she trusts that she is worthy of it. That is the part that most people skip over.
All right, guys, Christy from the future here. I had to pop on and say this because I know that some of you are feeling it. This is not about arrogance. Recognizing your worth is not the same thing as thinking that you are better than someone else, especially for some of my fellow Christian girlies who are thinking and have asked me, even in the comments, how does having a privileged mindset line up with being a Christian? Because somewhere along the way, we start believing that seeing ourselves as worthy is the same thing as pride. And it's not the same thing. If your worth comes from what you do, what you have, how you look, all of these things, yes, that is pride. But your worth doesn't come from you, it comes from God. And when you understand that you were created with intention, that you were created with value, God already called you high value, girl pop. You stop shrinking and you stop settling and you stop accepting things that don't align, because living beneath that isn't humility. It is misalignment. When you are constantly operating from this feeling of being less than, it shows up in your decisions, in what you tolerate and hold on to, in how you show up for life. But when you raise your self worth standard, you're able to actually live, move, and show up the way that you were called to.
So we hold on to things that we have outgrown because some part of us was never given that permission to just trust that we are worthy of good things. If what you were shown was make do, work extra, extra hard, and maybe you might get some sliver of something, or don't expect too much, that becomes your ceiling. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. And familiar feels like fact. And many times you don't know that the ceiling is there because you can't even see it. And then you find yourself holding on to something that you know that you should let go of, but you can't figure out why you can't. Or you keep ending up in the same situations, wondering how you got there again when you promised yourself that you wouldn't. You cannot raise a ceiling of a standard when you can't even see why or how you keep bumping into it. A woman with high self worth, she doesn't ask, can I have better? She decides, I don't accept less. And that's what makes it a privileged mindset. She's not waiting for circumstances to confirm that she deserves better. She's already decided. So she walks in rooms differently. She responds to situations differently. She doesn't chase or over explain or shrink, and people notice, even when they can't explain why. So now that we understand what the self worth standard is, these are the three shifts that we need to make to start leveling it up. Stop negotiating with what you already know doesn't belong. Whether in your home or your life, you already know what you do not need, want, use, like, what does not fit in your life anymore. The problem is that you keep giving it another chance. Maybe I'll use it. What if I regret letting it go? Let me hold on to it a little bit longer. No, that is the old standard. That negotiation isn't even really about the stuff. It is about what you believe you deserve to be surrounded by. That's why you'll often see this coming out in your home first, in the stuff that you keep, in the clutter that you have. It is one of the clearest reflections of your self worth standard. If your space is filled with things that are broken or draining or don't even align with who you are anymore, that's not random. That is a reflection of what you believe that you're worthy of. When your self worth standard is low, you make peace with less because part of you doesn't feel like you get to just decide. You feel like you need to have a good enough reason, like you need to justify letting it go. But a woman who is operating from a high standard of self worth, she doesn't need justification. This no longer serves me or where I'm going is reason enough. A higher standard of self worth doesn't over negotiate. It doesn't go back and forth on things that you already know don't belong. It doesn't keep justifying or making exceptions and saying one more time, and you already know what I mean. It decides and it follows through. If it doesn't match who I'm becoming, it doesn't stay. Period. The second shift is to stop making decisions as your current self and start making decisions like your future self. Your current self is comfortable with what's familiar, or at least content or complacent in some way with what's familiar. Even if it's not working, even if it's frustrating, even if you say you want something different, because at least you know how to function there. It's predictable, it's safe. But your future self, the woman that you want to be, she has a different standard. She knows that it is going to push her out of what is easy, out of what she knows, but she does it anyway. And it's not because she is more motivated than you. She just doesn't tolerate what you've been tolerating. So instead of asking, am I ready to let this go? And letting that be the kind of litmus test for whether or not you do it, ask, with the woman I'm becoming, keep this. And be honest, because she is not holding on to things out of guilt. She is not keeping things just in case. She's not filling her life with mindsets and people and things that drain her. She is clear. And that clarity, that comes from self worth. It comes from genuinely believing that your time, your space, your energy, all of it is worth protecting. You stop asking for permission to want more when you actually believe she's worth it. Three, follow through without delay. This is where a lot of people break their own standard. You decide, you feel clear, you feel motivated, and then you wait. You leave it there. You plan to come back to it and give yourself more time to think. And that is where the doubt and the old standard creeps right back in because you keep letting yourself off the hook. When you have a higher standard of self worth, you don't delay on decisions that have already been made. When you know something needs to change, you act on it. But when you delay, you teach yourself that your standards are optional. Women who are actually leveling up, their standards aren't optional. They're consistent. That doesn't mean that they're perfect, but they're consistent because every time you follow through on a decision that you've already made, you send yourself a message. I mean what I say. I do what I decide. I am someone who keeps her word to herself. That is how self worth compounds, not in one big dramatic moment, but in every small follow through. But that's also why it's easy to break the streak when life interrupts. And so it does require a level of intentionality. So those are the three shifts. You stop negotiating, you decide at a higher level, and you follow through immediately. I have found that this is where most people get and stay stuck. It's Not that you don't understand what needs to change. We know that. But understanding something and actually living it out consistently, those are two very different things. Every time life gets busy or hard or uncomfortable, the old standard is right there waiting. And without structure, without accountability, without people around you who are holding the same standard, it is really easy to quietly slide back into what's familiar. So we need an environment that makes the higher standard normal. For me, that has been the only way I've ever seen change happen in my life was when the higher standard that I was working to get to was just the normal environment. And so you have no other choice but to level up. And if you're at the point where you're like, I don't want to keep starting over on my own, I invite you to check out the KDT Collective. It is the structure and the accountability and the community of women who are holding a higher standard, not just for themselves, but for one another and not letting each other slide back. It is where you stop white knuckling this alone and have a container that actually keeps you consistent. My girls who are already in there love it and are already starting to see patterns and mindsets and habits change simply because they're ready for change and they have a structure that allows for it. I have a lady in there who kept stopping herself with a few of her goals, and within the first less than 2 weeks, has been able to start working through that and showing up for herself because she now has the space and support to see the ceiling that has been blocking her and start living above it. So, if that is what you need, the link is below. So here's how we're raising the self-worth standard this week. I want you to pick one area that you know that you have been settling because you secretly believe that you are not worthy of more. One space, one habit, one pattern that you keep returning to. And I want you to determine how you're going to stop negotiating, how you're going to decide at a higher level and follow through immediately. Just one thing. Do not make it your biggest or your hardest thing. If you have been in that situationship that you know is going nowhere for the last 13 years, you may need to build up to that. But it could look like not being available to take every call anymore. I'm just saying. This isn't about wholesale becoming someone else. It is about no longer settling for what you have outgrown. Your life reflects your standard of self worth. So if you want something different, you have to live from a higher level. Start there. All right, my friends, that is what I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and like it and share it with someone else who needs it. Also, if you're not subscribed, like, what are you doing? I'm gonna need you to jump on that. You already know I love you so much, and I will see you in my next one. Mwah! Bye for now.